Hi everyone, I'm Wendy Muse, creator of the Leftpoc Project, which brings you the history of leftists of color, one swipe at a time. And this is the Leftpoc Project podcast. So I'm going to keep it really casual today because I'm just doing a quick set of updates for you all about the podcast and the project itself, and also just a few little bits about a new segment that we'll be having at the podcast for your listening enjoyment. So first things first, happy Valentine's Day. It's Friday, February 14th. And I actually meant to release this podcast episode last night, but got hit with a bit of fatigue and had lots of errands and things I needed to do. And so I ended up not being able to record yesterday as I had initially planned. So my apologies for that right off the jump. But I also just wanted to remind everyone, or I guess tell people who don't already know from having listened to previous episodes, but I am having a baby. And my baby will be here. My daughter, to be more specific, will be here next Friday, which is February 21st. So things have been really busy on my end, just like trying to get my life together and the house together and, do any sort of, like academic work and things like that I need to finish prior to the arrival of my child. But on top of that, I've also just been super fatigued, like you would not believe. Sometimes I will go through a whole day hardly eating because I'm sleeping the entire time. So yeah, it's been kind of rough for me to keep up with doing any sort of preparatory podcast work. So I'd initially planned to do some episodes, record some episodes, to have ready for you guys in my absence. But it was just really hard because I had days where I couldn't keep my eyes open for longer than a couple of hours. And during those couple of hours, I had to be cleaning the house and organizing baby stuff and washing blankets and whatnot. So anyway, long story short, having a baby, I'm going to be busy and tied up with her for a bit because obviously, child rearing is important and your baby requires attention. So I can't guarantee exactly when I will be back in the permanent hosting position that I have. But I can say that, if she is mellow, then I do plan on doing some recordings even in her earliest few months. But it depends entirely on her personality. Like if she's really chill, then I can totally get some recordings done with her. If she is not, if she's, crying a lot or needs a lot of attention in a way that won't give me a couple hours here and there to talk to guests, then there may be fewer episodes, including me. That said, there is a contingency plan. So I have my amazing co-host, Richard, who is on board for doing some episodes in my absence. And of course, we also have our great assistant, Ariadna, who's also going to be helping out behind the scenes and doing some additional work on top of the amazing work she already does to sort of keep the boat afloat, if you will. So hopefully that will all go well. And in the meantime, obviously I'll be checking in on Twitter and I'll still be running the Twitter account and all of the social media accounts. There just might be sometimes infrequent posting just because I'll be busy, obviously, with the baby. In other news, I wanted to actually introduce the newest segment of our podcast. So for those of you who've been listening for a while, you know that we do a series of interviews where we talk to academics and activists about leftists of color and their history in movements and leadership. But we also have a segment called Reading Revolution, where Richard and I will read a text or any sort of writing, speeches, etc., that were either penned by leftists of color and or that inspired them in their movements. And this is a segment that we started a few months ago, a while ago now, actually. It's been going on for quite a while now. But it's something that I really enjoy doing and that I have found personally fulfilling. I know Richard has as well. And we've had lots of really good feedback from listeners about that particular segment too, because it allows us to sort of break down sometimes complicated theory or ideas that perhaps wouldn't be as readily accessible if we didn't have the discussions that we have. And we also started this because we really felt like, the reading group model is great, but sometimes because of work, because of school, because of life, people just can't get away from their other obligations to have the time to go and sit in a room with several other people for hours at a time to talk about a book. So we wanted to make sure that we were able to kind of bring the reading group to you all, and that's why we started this component of the podcast a while back. But now I wanted to bring a newer segment, and it's a segment that actually is a spin-off of sorts from something that I've already been doing on the Twitter account for the Left POC page. So I've been doing pretty much from the jump when I initiated the project, something called Left POC of the Week, where I feature a leftist of color and I talk about his or her work, life, activism, and things like that, their legacies. And I try to kind of, profile, have a few pictures of them, have some historical context about the environment in which they were working and, doing their basically like any sort of leftist ideological and praxis-based work. And I tried to keep that going. Sometimes I'm bad about it. Like I'll have the same person's face as the avatar for a very long time without changing it, and that's not intentional. Usually it's just that I get busy and have other things going on. But I wanted to actually bring the textual side of the Left POC of the Week to life by way of the podcast. And it was also a really nice way for me to sort of pre-record some things and release them while I'm, taking care of my daughter. So I wanted to introduce that. As I said, it'll be called the Left POC of the Week segment. It'll be a set of quick segments, maybe 5 to 10 minutes max, where I talk about a leftist of color and his or her life, work, and the historical context in which they were, activists. The other thing is, because there were previous leftists of color, like left POCs of the week that I had on the Twitter page and the Facebook page as well. Because of that, I wanted to make sure that I get caught up. So some of these left POC of the week may be familiar to you. You may have seen them already on the social media for Left POC, but I wanted to put them in audio form. And then from then on, we will have matching text and audio for the Left POC of the week once I start with the newer people that we haven't talked about yet. So get excited for that. One of the main things that really motivated me to start the project, in addition to, sort of reacting and responding to the problem of erasure of leftists of color in popular media and politics in the U.S., was the idea that, we have a lot of leftists of color that are amazing that we focus on regularly, I think, whose names are very familiar to many of us. And this is including, I'm talking about, leftists online, leftists offline, leftists of color that they're leftists of color whose names we are familiar with and we know their work. I can think of some off the top of my head, but I won't name any names. But I will say that most of them, for better or for worse, are usually American. They're from the United States, or sometimes maybe Cuba. They are usually men, cis men on top of that, and heterosexual men. They are usually, they usually have access in some way to certain resources, maybe of an upper class or upper middle class background, things like that. And one of the things I really wanted to do with the Left Pocket Project, in addition to what I already mentioned about just in general educating people about the history of leftists of color, is also to provide information about leftists of color that even leftists don't necessarily talk that much about, and that haven't been centered in our discussions about leftist history, and particularly leftists of color history. So you'll notice that a lot of the Left POC of the week that I have featured on the social media and that I will continue to feature through this segment happen to be women, happen to be identified as LGBTQ, may be from other countries, obviously beyond the United States, because the Left Pocket Project involves recognizing the work of leftists around the world. So I'm trying to expand our knowledge, our collective knowledge of the work that leftists have done throughout time, and really the work that they continue to do to keep fighting for a more just world and just societies where they live. And I hope that, those of you who get a chance to listen to the listen to the podcast and tell a friend or a family member about the podcast will enjoy these segments. And it'll be nice because they're short, so you can easily share them. You can easily, skip over them if you're not super interested, or you can always go back to them. And it'll be something quick and easy. It's also really helpful as well for, I think, students who are working on these kinds of history. So I've always gotten messages from students at high school level, college level, asking me about certain movements. And sometimes I point them to specific movements. Sometimes I point them to specific books or leaders. And I think sometimes the Left POC of the Week feature really will allow people to kind of start to dig deep. It's always a nice little introductory bit to much larger histories. And so I think that's why it's really important to do something like that and make it a central component to the project itself and the podcast. So with that said, be on the lookout for Left POC of the Week segments. And yeah, I hope that I can check back in sooner rather than later to do a couple interviews, or at least, come in every now and then on a Reading Revolution segment to discuss things with Richard about what we're reading. But we'll see. We will see what happens. I cannot predict the future. But one thing I'll say for sure is that you guys will always be on my mind. Even in my little mini hiatus, the project itself will continue to roll on while I am taking a break it's not a break, but it's taking a break from the podcast to raise my daughter. And I really appreciate, as always, those of you who've been with us for a long time, those of you who are our newer listeners, of course, anyone and all of you who have continued to donate to this project and support us financially, as we are indeed listener funded. And again, anyone, as I said, who's been able to share, comment, tell others, friends, family members, colleagues about the work that we're doing at Left POC. I sincerely appreciate it. And I hope that you continue to do that, despite my not being here, because Richard and Ariadna are going to be working really hard to bring you content. And they have busy lives too. So just, show them a little appreciation as well, if and when you get the chance. And again, you can always follow the project by searching for @LeftPOC, and that's LEFTPOC. You can find us on Patreon if you'd like to make a donation of $1 or more per month, and that's patreon.com/LeftPOC. Also note that on the Patreon page, you can find our episodes, you can find reading material from the episodes, you can find book lists, all sorts of stuff. So be sure to check that out, and note that our Patreon is free. All of our content is always free to the public. We plan to keep it that way indefinitely, thanks to your donations. And so be sure to check that out. And you can share that with friends and family as well. And last but not least, follow us on social media. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're on some other stuff that I am not the best at updating, but you can at least follow us and comment there. And I also just wanted to, of course, remind people that the podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts. So we are on Spreaker, Spotify, iTunes, Soundcloud, a whole bunch of other podcasting services, Luminary, I believe. And we're also now on some other newer podcast applications, because we were asked, I was asked by a listener if we were featured on some other application. I can't remember which right now, but I just added us. So we're kind of everywhere. So basically you can't miss us. If you just type Left POC on Google, you'll find us. Oh, and also we are on YouTube, because I know some of you prefer to kind of watch your content. So you don't see me or Richard or any of our guests, but you do hear the audio. And through YouTube, obviously you can save episodes. You can even more easily share episodes, things like that. So some of you prefer YouTube and may enjoy checking out the podcast through YouTube. So again, you just go on YouTube and search for Left POC, and you will find us. So again, thank you so much. I hope to be back in touch very, very soon. And yeah, everyone have a great Valentine's Day. As I said, Valentine's Day weekend, and enjoy what is left of this very short month of February. And yeah, I hope to be back soon. And wish me luck also with parenting, because it's my first and probably my last baby, first and only. So yeah, I hope that I hope that my husband and I can raise a little baby leftist as well, and that she won't pull a Pete Buttigieg or Kamala Harris on us and turn on us and become a centrist. But a girl can only hope. Anyway, peace out, you guys. Thanks so much again.